What's up, everybody? It's Jeff Bernard with Solve Systems coming to you from Houston, Texas. And disregard these little guys. I'm getting a different setup in a few weeks, and I'm going to have a better uh, camera and mic setup at some point, kind of figuring it all out. But I wanted to kind of explain something with Power Apps that I've been dabbling in, not really dabbling, definitely making a bunch of applications in, but I guess, better understanding, which is patching stuff back to a SharePoint list. So the thought with this simple application and idea is that you have you define your process, right? And for this instance, we're going to use a trip log, so like a work log where an employee's going from here to there and gives information. And you can elaborate on this. So in these examples, if you're like, oh well, it doesn't have enough information, who would ever use that? Elaborate on it. These lists and these applications are for the purposes of this video. And if you need more in-depth information, let me know. So the point of this is that you start off with your first criteria, so your first entry of a form, and then you want to make additional screens, right? And you want to make that progressively update as your audience, your end user of the application, is progressing through the app. So we're going to kind of get into that and help you guys better understand how to progressively patch back multiple forms uh, back into a SharePoint list. So let's go. All right, so kind of what we have here is a SharePoint list. This is exactly what we have here. So all we did was we went to our test site, whatever your site is, go there, create a list. So you're going to have the title column that's always there. I always get rid of that. I make it non-required. I go into my list settings, which I've covered on previous videos, and make that non-essential because I just don't like it. I don't know why. I think because you can't really name it what you want, and it's always going to be title when you get into Power Apps, and I don't really like that. So what we have here is we have employee name, right? So our work trip's going to be the employee name, and you could use like the user in your system for this, or any kind of other information. But I just want to get the point across about what we're trying to do here. So um, we have employee name, type of vehicle, and then where are you heading, right? So city. And we can make drop downs for all this. If you have a localized territory where it's like, okay, we only cover these cities, well, you can make a choice column with that. So I'll go into kind of the column structure real quick. We're going to go to edit, and I'll move this around over here. Yeah, and so right here we have employee name, and that was just a single line text. And then we have type of vehicle, and that just made it a choice column. Chevy, Dodge, Ford, super simple. And then we got where are you heading? Okay, so we got a little goofy little question. Probably make it a little more precise in your applications, but we understand the concept here, yeah? Okay, cool. So we're going to shift into the Power Apps end of things. So we're just going to generate some screens here initially. We're going to bring in our landing screen. I always like to make a landing screen. And so the idea here would be if you would have a few applications you wanted built into one, so you had a few lists rather built into one application, you could have a landing page here, and then you can send your users here and there and wherever they needed to go instead of building a bunch of applications if you have the same users using the same app. And so kind of we're going to go through it real quick just to see how it works and then boil it down from here. So let's bring that over there, and then we will pop it open. Okay, so we have trip log, and we're going to go into trip log, and we're going to say my name, and I can't spell today, even my own name, and then we submit. Okay, yes, back to the SharePoint list, Chevy. Yeah, we'll go with Chevy. Actually, I have a Ford, so we'll go with Ford. And then where are you heading? We'll just say Austin, Texas, because I'm in Houston, and I would like to be in Austin because Austin's cool. So, and then we successfully completed that. So what that looks like on the other end is SharePoint list, right? So we'll just kind of refresh this. Of course it's going to take forever. Why wouldn't it take forever, right? Got gigabit internet over here. And so here we are. I have my name. We have Ford, right? And then we have Austin. And again, in your applications, you're going to want to make this stuff more specific. So you could actually tie in, your Office 365 user's credential as the name, so it automatically does this. So you're not relying on your users to do that. And then you can have your make and model and do all your very pretty, nice, and awesome data entry stuff. So let's go back to the application real quick. Okay, and then we'll get out of the player and we'll look at the employee name. So this is what this looks like. Okay, you're going to add your form like you regularly would. Okay, so you add in your form and you're going to add in your field. So that would just simply be, well, I'm not seeing it, employee name, right? And so that adds it to your list or your form submission. And so that would be form 1. Okay, pretty basic, pretty simple. Then we're going to add our submit button. And if you see here, I'll get this down a little bit. Okay, so we have submit form 1, which is our name, and then navigate to type of vehicle. Okay, so that's our next, it's going to be our next screen. And so that will be here. And then we do the same thing. We add another form, right? And then we add our type of vehicle. And typically when you add a form in and you add your data source, it's going to add everything, right? So just delete out what you don't need and make sure it's from one to the other, to the other, to the other. Unless you want all this on one page, then that's a totally different style of application that you'd be building. So this will be form 1_1. And then you have your submit button. Now you'll see right here is where we start patching, right? So you have patch, then you have your data source, and you see it gives you the prompt up here, and then you have form 1, and then here's the cool part. Okay, so you're going to patch back to the last record that form 1 generates. So think of it as form 1 starts everything off, and then you patch back, but you're adding different forms. So it's like form 1 and then form 1_1. But when you submit that, it'll update the original entry on form 1. And so you have form 1 dot last submit, right? So that's the last thing that was submitted under form 1. So it goes in the system, it's like, okay, I submitted this first record. Okay, this next screen with a different form, I'll submit this back into that particular record row, whatever you want to call it. And so then you're going to say type of vehicle, right? So last submit, right, record, and then the update. So that's the column within SharePoint for this particular thing. And if we go to the SharePoint list, I'm going to show you something that is not always, I guess, as straightforward as some of the other things within PowerApps. But if you see, so that was what we did there. We went into your little cog up here, and then we went, let me go back. Okay, trip log. Okay, so we have trip log, and then we go to the cog up here, settings, and at some point, okay, list settings, right? So this is how we get to what's behind the columns, our names, and then we see here, okay, so right here we have employee name, type of vehicle, where you're heading, and if you see in the lower portion, you'll see a URL. It's like at the bottom of the screen. You'll see employee name or field equals, and then you'll see how you're going to write this within PowerApps to patch back to the SharePoint list. So I hope that's not confusing, but you'll kind of see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to quickly toggle to my other web page, okay? And so right here, we'll toggle back. Type of vehicle. So you hold it on, hover over the label, and then you'll see within field type, type of vehicle, right? So it's together, right? Capital T. So you want to do it word for word, or character for character rather, because if you don't, it's gonna not update, and you're gonna be like, I don't understand. This is very aggravating, right? So we'll go back into SharePoint. Power Apps, and so here we have type of vehicle, equals, right? Update card value, data card value 7 dot selected, okay? So that means type of vehicle, and then the data card that holds that information, and then dot selected, right? Because this is a choice field. If you look here, this is a choice field. And so, whoop, I'm forgetting my command prompt for this. Anyway, this is drop down, right? So we had our vehicles earlier. We had Dodge, Chevy, and then Ford, right? So this is simply on the submit button. We're patching work trip, our data source, and then we're gonna patch in to the first form dot last submit, and then the column is type of vehicle, and then our choice, and then we're gonna navigate to the next page, right? Or the next screen rather. So then we end up here, okay? So where are you heading? Austin, cool. Now what does that look like? Okay, it's a little bit different, right? Right here. So again, patch our source, which is our list. The form, we're going to continue to reference form 1 the whole time through every screen, right? Even though we have different form numbers, we still want to reference the first form. Okay. And then where you're heading is a little bit different, right? Because I added the question mark. So within the syntax, I guess, of the SQL stuff that they have on the back end of this, this little guy will look a little different, right? So where are you heading? We hover over in our settings, list settings, and then these titles. And then if you look at the lower part of your screen again, you'll see where are you heading underscore X003F underscore. Very important to get every single one of those characters absolutely correct, or you're going to have a bad time. So that's what that looks like here. And then equals data card value 9 dot text. Okay, so the dot text is because it's a text column, so we're going to want to patch back that exact data type. Okay, and then we have that there, and then we have success, right? Because we want to tell our users, hey, this is successful, very successful. So from here, we'll go play it, and then you see it has a timer on the success screen. So what that looks like is we'll drop down under our screen, and then we'll have our little dialog box here. So here's the thing. I like to do these success screens because you can get like a lot of the, I guess, the nuance of resetting forms and getting good clean data in a nice loop going on with your user experience. I like to do that with timers. And so on the back end of this, you just add a timer control from up here. I promise it's in here, right there. And then you turn its visible property up here to false. And then you keep using that, right? So we're going to go to advanced properties, and then we're going to say on timer start false. Our on timer end is going to be where we're going to do all the resetting. So here's the difference. We referenced form 1 the entire time, and now is where we're going to reference the other forms just to reset them and get clear forms when we loop back and enter another trip. If we don't close out the app, right? If we close out the app, it's going to reset everything, but we're going to make the assumption that our users are they're going to do exactly what, not the wrong thing, but exactly what we're not anticipating. And so we have reset form 1, we have reset form 1_1, and then reset form _2, which is how our forms are numbered within PowerApps. So, and then our navigate function, right, back to landing. So it creates this nice loop. It goes from employee name, submit, patch back to SharePoint, to type of vehicle, choose or make the choice, right, patch that back, and then head where we're heading, then patch that back, and then success, reset, back to landing. Full closed loop. It's pretty awesome, and I hope that's helpful. And we just want to make sure that, I can't stress enough that when you're patching stuff, make sure the column names are exactly as they appear here within SharePoint. And you want to make sure, because sometimes PowerApps has this disconnect with naming things, I've noticed, and I'm not really sure why, but it's not that big of a deal. As long as you're referencing from within PowerApps, your SharePoint, the names of your actual columns within SharePoint, you'll be good to go. Now, one other thing I can stress is don't go in and rename your SharePoint columns. If you messed up on a name, mistype something, or you want to name it something else, create a new column. Delete it, create a new column, and you'll save yourself a lot of frustration and headaches in the long run. So I hope you enjoyed this. I will be making more videos. If you have any topics that you want covered in a different way, or you have any feedback for me other than trolling, have at it. So hope you enjoyed this, and we'll catch you later.